Chad here with Purple Collar Life. I've seen quite a few videos lately. I just watched a really good one from Hometown Acres on how to measure and cut the perfect firewood and be precise in that measurement and consistent. I'm going to show you what I use. Not saying that it's better, but I think it works better for me. And there's a lot of methods out there. There are things that attach to the bar like Adam showed on Hometown Acres that could be magnetic. There are things that are attached to the nuts that hold the bar in place. There are spray tools that you roll along the log. It measures 16 or 18 inches and puts a spray dot down. Some people use a tape measure and chalk along the log. All those things are good methods, but I'm going to show you what I use that I think is faster, cheaper, and better. Okay, both saws are warmed up, ready to go. We have the rest of the stem of that tree that came down in the windstorm. I'm just going to go ahead and cut that and then pull it out. Now, like I said, I've seen several different people use different methods. Some people would take a tape measure, start at the end, measure off every 16 inches, hit it with a chalk piece. That works okay. I don't like that method because then I'm going down the log multiple times, putting the tape down, marking it with chalk. I'm doing a lot of math in my head, 16 plus 16 plus 16 plus 16. If you've got a tape that shows you where the studs are, that's a lot more helpful. So you, like this tape for example does, you can see the 16 is in red, the 32 is in red, so that helps you, 48, helps you mark those 16-inch marks. But again, then you're taking a piece of chalk or something to mark with, laying this out, measuring down the line. Some people use like a threaded rod that gets hooked onto this nut that holds the bar in place. Sticks out 16 inches. You see your mark, you have to eyeball where that was, hit it. They either cut through it with that attachment still on the bar, or they eyeball where that ends, mark it, eyeball where it ends, mark it. To me, one of the downsides of that is it's attached to my chainsaw. You see, we live in the woods. A lot of times I'm going in and out of the woods with this chainsaw. I don't want something else along there that's going to be catching brush, catching the chainsaw while I'm walking. And I like the sides of the saw to be free. I don't want something attached there that, as I'm cutting down a log, I'm always seeing that. It's distracting, and it's one more thing in my way. Now, the tool I just talked about earlier from Hometown Acres, Adam, was a pretty cool tool. It's a strong magnet that sticks to the bar. Then he cut a piece of rod or cut a piece of PVC, glued it onto that magnet 16 inches out. So that way it is on the bar. It's out here at the end where he can easily measure. You can see it's here, cut, and then take the magnet off for cutting. So that's an advantage to that. Now let's talk about another method I've seen some people use. I actually almost bought one of these off of Amazon. I thought they looked so cool. Usually bright green in color. It's got a roller on it. You roll it down the log. Every 16 inches, or if you buy a different size wheel on it, it makes different measurements, but typically 16 inches, it puts a dot of spray paint, so you know right where to cut. Nice thing about that is, you can just start at one end, roll, spray, spray, spray. Couple downsides to that method. In the cold, I don't know that that spray paint would work very good. I don't know that the spray paint wouldn't just clog up at the nozzle. And the other thing I didn't like about it is the dot it puts out is a couple inches wide. So you know, you cut one on one side of the dot, the next one on the other side of the dot, you may have a 15-inch piece and then an 18-inch piece. So it's not exactly precise, though it is a physical dot you can look at to cut, whereas the other methods, you're eyeballing from the end of a rod or the end of something that's marking where you want to cut next. So as long as I'm going to be eyeballing anyway, the method I've used for decades is still my favorite. And let me show you what that is. Now this method I've been using for a long time, and I actually learned it from my dad. My MS290 is a 16-inch bar. From the end to the plastic is 16 inches. So I usually just use the bar, which is 16 inches like I showed, from the end to the plastic. Get you lined up here. And as long as I'm going to be eyeballing anyway with another tool, I line my bar up, I pick a point on this bark or the log that lines up the plastic, and then I can cut right there. It's a pretty precise method, really. You wouldn't think so, but if you pick a point on that log and stay focused on it when you swivel your saw, it's actually pretty easy to make those cuts. Now, I talked in a previous video about the MS271 having an 18-inch bar. So if I measure the bar here, we are 18 inches from the end of the bar to the plastic. 18 inches from the end of the bar to the plastic, actually 18 1/4. So what some people do who use this method that I use is they make a mark on their bar with like a marker. I haven't done that. I've always just gone ahead and cut with this chainsaw at 18 inches. See, I'm going to have some wood that's 18 inches long and some wood that's 16 inches long, depending on which saw I use, but they'll all be the same with that saw. So it makes it easier to stack them in the back of the Ranger or however I'm hauling them out. And I'm mostly burning them in my own house. I'm not selling any firewood at this point, so they don't have to be exact. So like I said in the title or the description of this video, the tool I use is free. It's built in, it came with the saw. It's a great method for me. I've grown up as that habit of twisting the saw to do it, so it's not a problem for me. The other methods, except for the paint, require me to eyeball where a marker is anyway, so I might as well eyeball where the end of the blade or the end of the plastic is. Works just as well for me. So I'm going to start at the end. We'll buck our way down this log, and then I'll use my tape measure to see how close to 16 inches we were on these cuts. And hopefully it turns out pretty close. Now, I'm not going to cut the end of this off. I know some people would square this off. For me, that cut where I let the tree fall down doesn't matter. It's not going to hurt anything in my wood burner. So we'll go ahead and start with this end and work our way down the log. Pretty even the whole way along there. We're free. I think our test worked out really good. I've got the tape measure here and I'll show you some pictures. I'm going to show you how these turned out, but I'm pretty impressed. Now I'll try to show you, but every single one of those logs is within a ½ an inch of the others. Now obviously my cuts aren't super straight, but they're all very close to each other, looking the whole way down those logs, and the fronts are all butted up against the bed of the Ranger. So you can see I'm really impressed with that. Again, it's a free system that I've learned to use that my dad taught me years and years ago, to just measure using the 16-inch bar and I've used it. It's fast. You get really accustomed to doing it, and it just becomes second nature. And I can eyeball where either the tip of my blade ends up or where the plastic of the molding is, and it makes really easy, quick cuts that don't require you beforehand marking the log in any way. It's a great system. I highly recommend it. One thing that I forgot to mention, I should have mentioned it up front, I totally forgot. If you've got a chainsaw that has a 20, 22, 24, 28, 30-inch bar, obviously this system won't work for you. But for most of us, a 16 or an 18-inch bar is perfect for what we're doing with firewood wood, which is usually, you know, diameters that aren't beyond the blade size of that. For me, I rarely cut anything that those chainsaws can't cut through in one pass. So the other question is, how close to 16 inches are we? I would say dead on or pretty close. And like I said, you can see they're all within a half an inch of that. This one's 16 1/4, 15 3/4, 16 dead on, 15 3/4, 16 1/8, 16 dead on. So those stats are pretty good for just eyeballing it. So like I said, there's lots of other methods that can be used. Some that aren't very expensive, some that are more expensive. I think the paint gun one costs about $30, and then you're always buying the paint cans to spray. And I'd much rather use this method because, like I said, I'm really good at judging the length of the log just based on this distance from the tip of the saw to the start of the plastic housing. And it ends up being within a half an inch of 16 inches every time I cut. Now this is a small sampling, obviously, and I probably was a little bit more particular because I knew I'd be measuring them afterwards, but my log piles are usually, if I cut them, just about all the exact same length. Now give or take a half an inch, maybe even an inch. Now remember, if I use the MS-271, then my logs are 18 inches long, but still always within a half an inch or an inch of being 18 inches long. So the method works for me. It's totally free. I've learned to do it that way, so it's easy for me. Some people may prefer to use the rod sticking out the side of the chainsaw. Some people prefer to use the paint. It really is whatever you prefer to use, whatever system works best for you. For me, taking less time, not having to mark the log in advance beforehand, not having anything sticking out of the side of my blade, it just works. The built-in tool, the built-in measurement tool works perfectly for me. If you like videos like this, make sure you click that like button. Comment down below on what tools you use to make sure your firewood's about the same length every single time. And we appreciate you watching. We'll see you again the next time. Since the Ranger's out, they're ready for more food. The ground is totally frozen now. It's a little bit more difficult for them to find food. So they come in here about this time every day to get some corn or any of the bird seed that's been knocked on the ground.